Hello, Brown football fans, and welcome to another edition of EverTrue Reruns. I'm your host, Scott Credici. Glad you could join us this Saturday. It is game day, and yes, no Ivy League football this year, but we hope it'll be back before too long. If there were Ivy football this weekend for the Brown Bears, it would be Penn weekend. And today we're going to take a trip back to the 1980 Penn-Brown matchup won by the Bears 42-22 at Brown Stadium. And joining us to do that is Larry Carbone from the class of 81. Larry, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Scott.
Larry, thank you for joining us. You were the captain for that team in 1981. You and John Woodring were the co-captains, were you not?
Correct. Woody and I had that great honor of being the co-captains for the 80 team.
And it was a game won by your team very easily. 42-22 is the final, but you guys jumped out to a 42-3 lead after three quarters. And if the Boston Globe depiction of the game is accurate, they said Coach Anderson put in some of the backups in the fourth quarter. I think the Quakers scored 19 points, and he had to get you starters back into the game.
Yeah, he was not very happy with the giving up of a few touchdowns. He loved the 42-3 score. And then when he put everybody in, he was like, all right, you guys go back in. This is getting dangerous. He was a very conservative coach, as you know. He built a lead. He wanted to hold on to the lead.
Yes, he did. Well, you guys, if we go back to that season, you started off with losses to Yale and Bucknell, and then you won at Princeton 28-11 the week before the Penn game. And you guys went on a nice little run there. You beat Princeton, you beat Penn in this game, and then you won at Cornell, who finished second in the league. They were 5-2 that year, and you gave them one of their only two losses. And then you won against Holy Cross before losing a real close one at Harvard and another close one at home to Dartmouth. You finish out the season with wins at Columbia, home against URI. My point is, you look at those Harvard and Dartmouth games, and they were so close. Realistically, this team could have won 8 straight to finish out the season.
Yeah, that was the way we ended was obviously very disappointing, and I'm sure if you ask my fellow teammates, kind of haunting us still 40 years later, right? But we did go on a nice run. We always were strong offensively in the ECAC and the Ivy League. And our defense really came on strong after the first two games. And then, we had a talented group of seniors behind Woody and Prassis on defense, and then Valilla and Curtin. And I had some great wideouts. And, of course, I have a Hall of Famer in Steve Jordan, who, you just got to throw it in his vicinity, and he had some big hands, boy. He would snatch it. So, yeah, it was an exciting year. It was a very up and down year as an athlete because we had some great wins and some heartbreak losses. I think, Dartmouth, I think we were up 24-10 or something along those lines. And, they had the connection of Shula and Kemp, and they came back and won in the fourth quarter. But, the Penn game was a lot easier than we had obviously thought, but we came out really strong. And put the numbers on the board. I think we were a little ticked off from where we were so far in the season. So it was a pleasure to play that game and go back in.
I look at your 3 years in the varsity because back in your day, they still had freshman football. Is that correct?
Correct.
So your 3 years on varsity, winning records all 3 years for your class, 6-3, 6-3, and in 1980, 6-4. So, three solid seasons on the varsity for your class, the class of 81.
Correct. And we had two during that time, we had two teams we did not beat, Yale and Dartmouth, my junior and senior year. And so that, continues to haunt me ever true to Brown, right?
Yeah. I look at the talent that you had too. And you mentioned Steve Jordan, right? What a great career he had in the NFL with the Minnesota Vikings, and your fellow co-captain, John Woodring. I mean, drafted by the New York Jets, and he spent, I think, 5 years in the National Football League. And even you played with John Sinnott in your career as well, right? I think earlier in your career.
Yeah. He was right tackle my junior year.
Wow. I mean, a lot of good pro talent coming through the Brown program at that time, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think John Prassis, the other linebacker next to Woody, sometimes didn't get his due credit, but he went on and played in Canada. And I know Rick tried out and then tore up his knee. So, we did have a lot of great talent, a good group of guys. Still keep in touch with some of them. So
you mentioned Rick Valella. He had 193 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Quakers in this game.
Yes. Rick was from Ohio, and he was used to playing big time high school ball. Yep. And had great speed and great vision. He got banged up both his senior year, so didn't always get on the field. But when he did, he was very, very good.
And you also had a couple of touchdowns from your fullback, Steve Curtin, in that game as well. Do you remember that?
Yeah, Steve, man, what a hard runner. Just, a bull-nosed driver. And, whenever I came into the huddle, he's like, so you call him my number, right? Call him my number, right? And the option, I'm open on the option. I said, Steve, they're coming down on you, I got to take it and go with it. And he's like, yeah, I don't care. Give me the ball.
Well, you had 2 touchdown passes yourself. Mitch Metz caught the first one, and Steve Jordan caught the second of the day.
Yeah, Mitch Metz was a fellow Badger, Wisconsin guy from Green Bay, Wisconsin. And so we, all 4 years we had that connection. And we also had another great junior receiver, Mike Campbell, who had, I think, hit one of his biggest games against the Quakers. And then, of course, Jordan, I think it was a 30-plus yard touchdown pass to him. But, who would have known then what Steve would have turned into? I mean, I went to, just an aside, the Jets played the Vikings in Minnesota. I think the year after Jordan was a rookie. Yep. And Woodring got me 6 tickets, and we went from Kenosha, Wisconsin to Minnesota with 6 of my buddies, and we're able to see Steve and John play. It was great. It was great.
That is awesome. So you mentioned you're from Wisconsin. Are you in California now? Is that right?
Actually, I live in Ohio.
Okay.
Columbus, Ohio. Okay. And I worked kind of moved around with Abbott Laboratories. And so we moved to Columbus, Ohio in 2004. And being a Badger was kind of tough. And both of our kids, my wife Stacy and I, Alexa and Paxton, both graduated from Ohio State. Wow. So the house is torn. Yeah, the house is torn between the Buckeyes and the Badgers when they play. But it's nice to constantly see a great team play every week.
So you were inducted into the Brown Athletic Hall of Fame. Is it in 1989? Is that accurate?
Correct.
And I think so. At the time, you must have been in California, because I think I read your
yes.
Moreno Valley, California at the time.
Correct. Yeah, Moreno Valley, then back to Illinois for 11 years, and then finished my Abbott career in Columbus, Ohio.
Tell me how you wound up at Brown from Wisconsin. Being a high school kid in Wisconsin, how'd you wind up in Providence at Brown University?
Great point. A guy by the name of Billy Russo. He was our offensive line and coordinator at the time. Very dynamic individual. And of course, he was Italian, so that helped with my dad. My dad was my high school football coach. So, but we went up to Milwaukee for a meeting with all the other recruits. John Anderson was there, Coach Anderson. And it was, the year after they won the Ivy title. And so they were riding high, and I was looking to get a great education. And, I could have gone to some other places, but they wanted me to play defensive back. And I wanted to play quarterback. And so, it was a long way to go back in those days away from home. But Billy Russo convinced my mom that it was a good thing to go that far away. But Billy Russo was a really great recruiter, great guy. And then, of course, Brown was doing really well. And I had trips to Yale and Dartmouth, but kind of fell in love with, the Hill and the fellow classmates and coaches. So it was a tough decision to go that far away from home, but I'm glad I did it. Never look back.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You were an option quarterback and a lefty, a southpaw, right?
Correct. We ran the triple option, sprint out attack in the passing, very few dropbacks occasionally, but everything was kind of geared off the veer. And but we still threw the ball, 15, 20 times. Nothing like Coach Perry did when he played. And I had the great honor of following Mark Whipple.
Yes, you did.
As the quarterback, and we played 4 years of baseball together, or 3 years of baseball together as well. And Whip, I still see Whip now and then because he coaches Pittsburgh now.
Right.
He coached the Browns. He's coached forever, right?
Yep.
So anyways, but we were in the triple option, the sprint out attack.
Yeah. And you were, obviously going to Brown to play quarterback turned out to be the right decision for you. You were second team All-Ivy as a junior when you started, and as a senior, first team All-Ivy, All New England, honorable mention All-American, and you led ECAC Division I football in total yards as a senior. So I guess that was kind of a message to those coaches that thought you should play defensive back in college, right? You could play.
Yeah, I guess so. Everybody's got a little chip.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone's got a little chip on their shoulder. And, I had great teammates. I had a great offensive line with Jerry Deichman and McCabe and John Atchison, et cetera. Those guys, protected me pretty well. And again, like I said, the backfield with Valilla and Curtin, you couldn't ask for a better backfield. So
I'm going to read you the opening paragraph, the story for the Penn game. This is out of the Boston Globe. The University of Pennsylvania's football team almost should have stayed in bed yesterday, but the Quakers and they were belted by Brown 42-22 before 4,500 at a damp Brown stadium. So it was a wet day, huh?
Yeah, it was. We always would catch the back end of a nor'easter or something, and there was always a mud game. I think my junior year we played in the back end of the hurricane against Harvard, and we won 17-6, but it would just rain the whole game. So, coming out in those games, if you get ahead, it's kind of hard to catch up.
Yep. And then the second paragraph reads, doesn't sound like a romp, but it was. Brown was ahead 42-3 after 3 quarters before Penn took advantage of Brown's second unit on offense, which turned the ball over 4 times. It got so bad that Brown coach John Anderson had to put his first unit back in with 4 minutes to play. So you thought your day was done, right?
Absolutely. We had helmets off, and we had to find our helmets on the sideline, and we're like, what? We're going back in? We were just hoping we didn't pull a muscle being cold.
So you mentioned John Woodring, your fellow co-captain, played 5 years in the NFL. He was also an honorable mention All-American your senior year as well. So, 2 great players on the same team. You mentioned Steve Jordan. I don't know if you've kept in touch with him, but he is an elementary school teacher in Darien, Connecticut, and he is a special teams coach at Greenwich High School in Connecticut. So he still has his hand in the game.
Yeah, John, occasionally. John was in my wedding, along with some other Brown graduates. But Woody has always had a special place in my heart. He always kept me focused when maybe you wouldn't be, and he'd kick you in the butt and say, "You get your act together. We need a drive. Yep. The defense is tired. We need a drive." But yeah, John is, going from the pros that high is just, unbelievable. But now teaching young kids, and I think his son played a little high school ball. I'm not sure if he went on to college, but he lives in Connecticut. So very proud of what he's become.
Just besides the Penn game or even that senior season, what are some of your fondest memories of your 4 years at Brown, either as a member of the football team or just as a student at Brown University?
Yeah, it's small knit community, Brown University. A lot of people, look at it and say, "Oh, it's a small school," but the relationships and friendships probably has been the most satisfying. I'm out here in Arizona right now, and one of my roommates lives out here now, Ed Schober. He played on the team for a few years, but the games that are most memorable for me, the Harvard loss. As a quarterback, those are the things that kind of angst at you. I think my junior year, how we really took control of the respective games. and went down, clicked them off. I think we finished very strong my junior year. We had great people. John Sennett, you mentioned, Sparky Farnham, a wide receiver. That was fantastic. But the biggest games in my senior year, I think we got back on track after 2 losses. Mm-hmm. It was a stunner to us that with all the talent we had, we were 0-2. And we righted the ship, won 4 in a row, then lost some close games and finished with 2 more. So felt good about the season. The Penn game, the Cornell game up in Ithaca was a big win. And then, continued to play well the rest of the way. So, there's 40 years has passed, but those memories are pretty darn fresh.
I wasn't half the athlete that you were. I wasn't a Division I college athlete, but I played 3 sports in high school. And I've heard you say this, and I've heard other guys say this in these Zooms that we've done every week. Why is it that with athletes, we remember the losses sometimes more than we do the wins?
Yeah, I always once I catch myself doing that, it's like, what about all the great things we did as a team, right? And I think it's because we did really well, but those blemishes kind of stand out because we knew we could have beaten those teams or won those games. They were so close. A side note, I'll tell a quick story if it's okay.
Sure.
So fast forward, okay, we lost to Dartmouth when Kemp and Shula had the game-winning touchdown. And my dad was a high school football coach, went to many of Don Shula football camps. Don Shula is getting inducted into Canton, the Hall of Fame. My dad and I were on a trip from Wisconsin to the Hall of Fame to visit. And of course, my dad was like, oh man, I wonder if we could see Shula. And it's like, oh, sure, Dad, right? So I slipped the guard a $20 bill because I knew he was in the building. I said, call me when he's leaving. And I grabbed my dad's hand. At this point, he's 65. And we ran to where he was leaving. They had everything, guarded, roped off and everything. And I just yelled, Coach Shula, how's Dave doing? He stopped, grabbed my dad to the ropes, introduced myself and said, he goes, I remember you playing against David Brown and blah, blah, blah. My dad and him had a few words. And my dad played football with Alan Amici, who, of course, Shula coached with the Giants. So they had 1 minute. And my dad looked over at me and goes, son of a gun, I can't believe you did that. But it's about relationships and who you played and what have you. But I think it's the reason we remember those games is because we knew we could have won, and it made the difference between an Ivy title and not.
Yep. Yale was the champion that year. Yale was 6-1. Cornell, as we mentioned, 5-2. And you guys were part of a 4-way tie for third. Brown, Harvard, Princeton, and Dartmouth all finished at 4-3 in the standings that year.
Yeah, I mean, that to me was probably the most disappointing to end third. I think the year before we were second. Mm-hmm. And we knew we had to beat Yale. And I look at the schedule like now, and Yale is never first. I wish Yale would have not been first every year because they had our number. But I think if we would have played them after a few games, it might have been different. But it is what it is.
Well, obviously a great career for you as a 2-sport athlete at Brown, a member of the Brown Athletic Hall of Fame. Larry, thanks for joining us on EverTrue Reruns and taking a trip down memory lane. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it so much. Go Bruno.
Brown-Penn game the following week, on paper at least, shaped up as a good one. The Quakers had gone 17 games without a win, but had broken the string with an exciting come-from-behind win over Columbia the week before. After the Bruins stopped Penn in its first possession, thanks to solid hits like this one from sophomore defensive tackle Chuck McGrath, Brown marched 47 yards in 9 plays for a touchdown on its first possession. Carbone to Mitch Metz in the right corner of the end zone. He stretched it out to give Brown an early and permanent lead. After a 31-yard field goal by Penn, Brown took control. On the Quaker 44, Carbone and Campbell gained a big chunk on this 25-yard pass play. Carbone then called his number on the next play and raced 11 yards to the 10-yard line. And that set up senior tailback Rick Valella. He burst off right tackle and into the end zone. The second of 6 points by Bud Brooks gave Brown a comfortable 14-3 lead at the end of the first quarter. The Brown defense continued to blunt the potentially dangerous Penn running game, as evidenced by this Mike Audie hit on Penn halfback Doug Bove. Brown's next drive started at the Bruin 18, but it took only 4 minutes to cover 82 yards. The biggest play, the last one, Rick Valella through the middle and a 46-yard touchdown gallop. On its next series, Penn again stymied thanks to plays like this one by John Crassus stopping quarterback Doug Marzoni in his tracks. Then the offense again. This time, 54 yards in 11 plays. Carbone and Jordan, 14 yards on that pass play. And then Curtin, eluding the grasp of 2 tacklers, bursting into the end zone for the score. At the half, Brown had outgained Penn 262-62 in total yardage. And it would get worse for the Quakers in the first 6 minutes of play in the third period, when Brown scored twice. The first score on the heels of a smooth 81-yard, 15-play drive. A 17-yard pass from Carbone to Campbell started things off. The drive ended when Curtin slanted right and ran 4 yards for the touchdown. On the first scrimmage play after the kickoff, Penn fumbled. Jim Stannard recovered at the Quaker 32 on the first play. Carbone found Jordan alone on the Penn 18. He raced in for the score. That ended the Browns scoring for the day. Penn rallied in the final period to make it 42-22, but it didn't tarnish the outstanding job the first-team offense and defense performed.